Hey, how's it going? So I just talked and talked and talked for a really long time, and the camera was not even on. So let me start over. Today I want to talk about. Oh, well, it's the end of my Brendan Fraser fan appreciation series, and I'm going to be covering Blast from the Past. So here's the sign with the YouTube disclaimers, and also some information about the movie and the cast list. Yeah, there's the stuff for YouTube at the top and everything you need to know, and there's the cast list. Okay, I hope you got enough time to hit your pause button if you're interested in seeing what that said. Okay, so this movie was, first of all, it was a crack up. I mean, it wasn't just laugh out loud. I was embarrassingly honking laughing like a farm animal at times, which is great. It was just what I needed at the time. Uh, One thing about it I noticed right away was that it's very similar, or the character that Brendan Fraser plays is very similar to the one he played in Still Breathing, which was this guy who's a little different. And in a lot of ways, the characters are just polar opposites, but they have a lot of similarities. They're both very grounded, they're both family oriented, they're both sweet, and the overall tone of the movie is sweet. And I usually take a look at who wrote these things when I go to cover them here, because I want to get a feel for the tone, or who is responsible for the tone. I want to get a feel for the people who are responsible for the tone of the piece. Yeah. So this one, in the IMDb, it said that the story was by someone named Bill Kelly. And Bill Kelly is somewhat of a mystery man because he does not have like his birth date information down there, which is actually what I was looking for in this case, because it's got a lot of old fashioned themes. And I thought, wow, these people must be kind of old. And one of them, so Bill Kelly wrote the story, and his credits were Enchanted, which I have not seen. I believe it's a child fantasy magic film from the title. Uh, Something about princesses, I think. And then the other credit that he had was for Premonition, which I also didn't look up, didn't go try to see, because the title's pretty self explanatory. It's some kind of supernatural thing. And it doesn't really, I don't think, have much to do with this show. Maybe the other one does, as far as being sweet and happy and fun and nice. And so the other person who's credited is was the screenwriter, and his name was Hugh Wilson. He was born in the 40s, 1945, and it makes sense because you can see that influence in the characters in this movie. So his credits were WKRP in Cincinnati, which was a 70s sitcom, which you could see wherever you could see, like the Golden Girls. And it was very sweet and funny. And it had some, like, Norman Learish type topics sometimes, as far as like social things and just like people interactions, and bonding over differences. So it was like I think kind of a masterpiece of a sitcom, WKRP in Cincinnati. So the reason why I want to know about those guys is because there is a certain tone, and I'm just going to say it. It's a little a touchy thing, I feel like, to talk about right now, because the world is so explosive and surprisingly, like, you think everything's fine, and next thing you know, somebody's cussing you out. And I had an incident today when we were out shopping. So I mean, but you don't know what's going on with other people, and so they could just be set off really easily. And sometimes it's people getting hurt, or incarcerated, or something. And it's not everywhere, thank goodness. So that's why I feel like it's a little touchy to talk about, but there's a reason. And it's I'm not saying it in a bad way either. It's just that it obviously came from a certain cultural perspective that is very different from mine. And also because this movie takes place in Hollywood, and in the movie there's like two black people, and the way that they address them, in one case it's the character of the father character, and he comes out of, well, I'll get to that. But the reason why the whole white centric cultural uh, view is important here is because of the emphasis on the nuclear family. So, okay, the premise is that the scientist from Stanford, really brilliant guy, but also has an insane paranoia about communists in Russia. Uh, I think he was. They say he is working as whatever as a professor, and he invents something, and the government like buys it, and he gets rich, and now all he does is tinker and be paranoid. According to the guests at his party, which is how the film opens. And during the party, there is an announcement that somebody sees, and they come running in to tell the paranoid professor Khrushchev and Kennedy are talking, and it's really scary. And it was during the Bay of Pigs tensions. That's what they're talking about. And if you don't know what that's all about, type Bay of Pigs into your search bar and get that information. But yes, it was a very tense time, and it's very scary, and had people ducking under desks as if that's going to save you in your school from a nuclear blast. Man, they try to psych out our minds with so much stuff, but that's neither here nor there. But as I was saying, in the premise of the movie, this announcement comes, and they have to. The guy comes, the party goer comes, and like tells the father about this announcement on the news, and he sees it, and he immediately thinks that it's the bomb is coming, and it's going to be the end. He sends everybody home, ends the party, and one of the things that he's tinkering on, which the guests comment some of them about, is that he's like in his shed all the time. Well, his shed actually underground expands way far out underneath the house underground to make basically a whole other version of their above ground house below the ground, and it's their fallout shelter. And after he sent everyone home, they go running down there, and his wife is pregnant. So I thought that's a problem. And as paranoid as the guy is, it's like you get what you wish for. You know, it was you. We all know how Bay of Pigs worked out. There was no bomb. But what did happen was a plane crashed on their house, which led the scientists believe that the bomb had hit, and that's what they were feeling. And he runs and looks at his gauges, and he says, "Oh my goodness, the heat, the heat!" And which made me laugh because I thought, why is the bomb going to land on your house for one thing, and for another, if it did land on his house in like Menlo Park, California, or wherever they were, then your sensors would not be registering anything. They would be molten pools of not registering stuff. Yeah, but he believes it, and because he's sort of, I guess, trapped in his delusion, uh, he everything that happens outside of the shelter in his mind is part of the nuclear holocaust, which he's got it all planned out. You know, it's like stop this. He's got everything, as he says in the film, for every eventuality, and he's says in 35 years we can come out and go above ground. And so they stay down there for 35 years, and even though stuff definitely changes, and what is where his house was, like, if you can think about LA from like the 50s to today and how different it looks. I'm from there. The last time I lived there was in the 80s, like in Hollywood proper, where I'm from. I went back in I don't know 2000 or 1999 or something, and I had only been away for like 5 years. It was completely different. I recognized nothing. Landmarks, Hollywood, famous spots were just gone. Which, whatever. I don't live there anymore, so I guess I don't worry about it too much. But the point is that stuff changes. So 35 years. I mean, I was only gone 5 years before everything was totally different. They're gone 35 years. So his expectation when he comes out after he's been hearing noises above them because their home got turned into various types of establishment, and sometimes it had rock bands and stuff was just happening above ground, buildings going up and so on. And it all fit his delusion, the scientist, though. So he comes out, and his pregnant wife, they have had a child. I mean, their child is like a grown man, but he makes them all stay in the house, and he goes up to investigate because he is the head of the family, as he says, which is very nuclear family. Father knows best. Leave it to Beaver. Like, that's the kind of world mindset that I think that this family was coming from. The creation of them was born out of. So the father goes out expecting to see like this dystopian world, which he goes out at night, and so everything doesn't look great. And he's in the valley, and I mean, I haven't been there for a long time, but looking at the places in the valley, it really depended on where you were, like anywhere does at any time, how good or bad it looked. So it didn't look great, but it wasn't like blasted holes in the ground or anything like that. He was like, oh, they rebuilt. It's terrible. Um, and someone walks up to him, a sex worker, and it's one of the two black people in the movie. And this was something else that in the here and now on this side of the screen, we're all touchy about like racial stuff and who can say what to who, and we're kind of crazy right now. So the two people in the movie, which again, I grew up in Hollywood, and wherever you would be in Hollywood, there's always more than two black people. I'm sorry, we're all over the place, and there's a lot of us, but there's just two in this movie, and the way that they come to them, or the way that the characters approach them and interact with them, is, I got the feeling, I thought that they were looking at the first one, the one that I'm going to talk about now, the sex worker that the father meets when he goes up above ground. She comes up and asks him for a light, but she has a man's voice. She's dressed like a woman, though. And he's like the most oblivious, like, again, oh, that's right, that was in the other part that I didn't record. See, in the other part I talked about, or not the other part, but the when I was talking before and not recording, I talked about how it was just weird that this guy was a Stanford professor, and he was such a like dork, such a geek, like he didn't know anything. Like he wouldn't have been familiar with the gentleman's lunch, which referred to businessmen on their lunch break deciding to take acid, which is funny because it doesn't end in an hour, so you're having the acid trip for the rest of your day. But they found that out after the first time. But anyway, that was a thing that people were doing for a little while. And I think that the reason that got out was because in California, in the Bay Area, the government was conducting a program called Majestic 12. And what it was doing, um, I'm just going to talk about one thing that it did. One thing that it did was it set up rooms in um, like hotels in San Francisco or at people's apartments or wherever they could set it up so that they had a two-way mirror, and they would have like a prostitute bring in like a scientist or a whoever, a plumber or one of their colleagues. Like they really were like kind of jerks about it. They didn't really care about their test subjects, their welfare, what they were doing to them. It reminded me of a parallel story that there is another movie about called Wormwood that was made by the son of this scientist that was working for the government called Frank Olson. That, and I believe they were part of the same program, this Majestic thing, although Olson was on the East Coast. And what happened with him was they were, I think, investigating like exactly what hallucinogens do or what you could get people to do if you dose them with the hallucinogen. And even they were taking them themselves. There's a scene in Wormwood where Olson is there with his colleagues and they go on like a manly camping weekend cabin, whatever men do thing. But in this, it was like a working weekend and they knew they were all going to dose. I think they gave like Olson a super strong dose because when he realized why they were wanting to dose people and influence them, he realized it was like a terrible thing to do. And they were afraid that he was going to go public, apparently. And so they made a story that he committed suicide. But when the forensics were done, it was like the way that they said it was like, there's no way that could have happened. And the consensus is among a lot of people, myself included, is that the government just killed him because he was inconvenient and they didn't want him to drop a grenade in their secret work to maybe have a way to completely mess with American society. They just wanted to find out if they could completely mess with us, that's all, or other people. Because the Russians were doing it, so they had to be able to do it back, or, who else were they going to test? Like, no one, don't do that. Oh, sorry, that's not strategic. Okay, so I wandered way off. But the point is, this scientist was naive. But when he came out from the fallout shelter, he assumed that because the sex worker, played by an actor named Jasmine, by the way, Jacmun, the scientist assumes that because the sex worker says, I can be a girl or a boy, whatever you want, he thinks it's like some sort of like physical transformation that they can like and like change into this, or transform or so, I don't know. But it didn't seem like he understood that it was a human person that could change their clothes and their voice and their attitude without having surgery or anything or a machine. Like, I don't know. It was just, that was my perception. And I thought it was weird because the other person that's black that you see in the movie is met later by the son, which is Brendan Fraser's character. And he has grown up with no contact but anyone but his parents, and he's a good boy. That's all you can say. He's nice, he's considerate, and he's like grateful for everything and everybody, and it's unusual that you will see more and more people like that around these days in the midst of all of the furor that's going on and the kookiness. And his interaction was he saw a postal worker coming from the opposite direction on the sidewalk, and he says, "Oh, happy day, a black person." Now, I mean, from wherever you stand, whatever perspective you stand, if you hear that, hilarity ensues, right? I mean, I don't know, if someone says that to you and you're black, it's an odd thing to say to someone. And that is my point in bringing up those two characters and the fact that there's only two black people in this white centric movie. The way that they portray them is like the people that come upon them have come upon like machines or robots or creatures from another world or like mannequins or just some avatar that is a walking, I don't know, homunculus that has no anything of its own. Like, we're just mannequins for people to come up and like dump their biases on you, which is uncomfortable and weird, and it's always happened, but lately it's been happening a lot. And it's I'm just bringing it up because it's just a weird social thing. But with these people in this movie, everything is cool. Like, nobody takes really hard offense and gets really angry. It's just a curious thing in light of what's going on in the world now and what has gone on between races in the world since ever. um, yeah. So that's what I wanted to say about that. But yeah, it was very funny. I mean, it really had me laughing pretty hard on numerous occasions, and it was a sweet movie. It was a good choice for the last movie in my series. I I really enjoyed it. Um, and I'm just running out of steam here. The last thing I would want to say is I did the sign a little bit different. I did not add the character names because everyone, if you're looking at this, presumably you have a computer, you can also go to imdb.com and see the names of the cast and you can see the names of the characters. And that's why I didn't add that today. But in the other video, I did what I often do and I have not done here, oddly enough, is I'll be blabbling along and going really fast, I guess, and I'll do a Spoonerism, which is in. Here's an example. When I tried to say sheets and pillows one day, and I said peas and chillos, that's a Spoonerism. So I'm before I even get near the camera, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. So I'm writing out an outline, and I haven't written anything yet. I'm just thinking, you're going to have those Spoonerisms, and I started to think of write the cast, and I write. I know I haven't written anything in it, but I know I'm gonna write Sissy Spacek. So in my brain, I'm not even writing or saying anything. In my brain, I go Spissy Kasich. So I didn't do the cast list, but I wanted to share the silly Spoonerism with you because I just thought it was funny. Spissy Kasich, who was really good. Also, by the way, really good cast. Christopher Walken, always dependable, good. Even in bad movies, he's good. And Sissy Spacek, just wonderful. Like, I think I first noticed her really. I had seen her, like, in retrospect, I had seen her in other things, but what really made an impression on me was Carrie. That was the first thing I saw her in that I really noticed. And just everything I've seen her in since, just consistently really good. Like, what is the woman that always gets all the Oscars? Um, Meryl Streep, just as consistently good as Meryl Streep or Glenn Close or other women, female actors that are really good. Uh, and also Nathan Fillion was in it, really young, slim Nathan Fillion, which woohoo, cutie pie, in there with Brendan Fraser. It's getting to be time for me to be finished, but I can't even get the words out. Uh, it was enjoyable. If I were looking for something to do and like a lighthearted comedy that you could have like kids or easily offended adults watch with you, that would be one. Blast from the past. Um, I guess that's about it. I have a slight cat situation in here I have to keep an eye on. I have a new kitten introduced, and the older guy is not so famous on the kitten. Oh, and he's walking on stuff. Okay, thank you and good night. Oh, missed.